We'll see if this works. Okay, so welcome back. So nice to see all of you. Tonight's topic is unraveling self-consciousness. And before I ask for show of hands of how many people here have ever felt self-conscious. So if you have, you've come to the right place. If you haven't, close your eyes and imagine that when you open them, your face will be the only thing we all see on the screen, and everyone will be staring right at you. Right? And so when we have self-consciousness, what we want to practice doing, of course, is do the practice, feel the sensations in your body. When you're feeling self-conscious, so, oh, self-consciousness. So we want to recognize it. We want to go there, see if there's heat, contraction, energy, movement. And then we want to feel any emotions that are there, perhaps, like fear, anxiety, excitement, joy, and that kind of thing. So if the sensations you're feeling in your body were pretty just curiosity and neutrality, when then you're not obviously feeling any self-consciousness right then. But if you're feeling any kind of resistance or discomfort when you imagine people looking at you or feeling self-conscious, then this is considered negative self-consciousness. So there are two kinds. If there's a positive self-consciousness, is when you feel that people are all looking at you and you're feeling a lot of pride or enjoyment or excitement at people looking at you. So that's the positive self-consciousness. But I'll never forget in high school, in the English lit class that I was taking, when we went over, I think it was Confucius saying that said, wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, there you are. And it really struck me. It struck me because I was already really uncomfortable with a lot of self-consciousness. And I felt like there was this internal being or eyes that were constantly watching me, monitoring my every move and every word, and reporting back to me its analysis of how I was doing, right? It was saying, "Ooh, looking good," or "That was stupid, why did you say that?" Or, "Oh, you were just really funny." Or, "Oh, you're having a great hair day," or "a bad hair day," or "Wow, your eyes are really puffy today. Hopefully nobody will look at you." So I just noticed this inner judge, right? That was constantly monitoring how I was doing. And then if I noticed that anybody else, that made me feel extra self-conscious already. And then I was looking at everyone else, imagining and projecting that they were noticing the things that I was already self-conscious about that day. Or sometimes I wasn't self-conscious at all, and then somebody would do or say something, and then I'd be like, oh gosh, this is my, what's going on? And then start feeling self-conscious. So part of our practice is to really connect to this inner judge and see it clearly and learn to not take it personally. This has been a really important part of my practice because I realized that this judge means the best. It wants me to be accepted. It wants me to be liked and loved. And so it's doing its job. That's what it's trying to do. But it's a little, it's misguided, right? Because it causes me some stress and suffering when it's really coming up strong. So we need to actually see this inner judge that's constantly either pleased or displeased with how we're showing up to ourselves and to others, because that's where self-consciousness comes from. So the reason when we're talking about self-consciousness tonight is a lot of people have told me that they're feeling pretty self-conscious in this new Zoom platform that we're engaging in. And I've noticed a lot of you who used to be much more engaging, perhaps, in person have been different. or maybe even more engaging on Zoom or less engaging. So it's a different experience. And I just want to say that self-consciousness is really painful, and it's extremely debilitating, right? Yet just yesterday, I was having a meeting with other group of 7 Buddhist teachers, and we were meeting together to discuss certain things we're working on. And every so often, you know, with the Zoom platform, whoever's moving the most or making noise becomes the center screen. Every so often, I'd become the center screen. And I had these hairs on the top of my head that were just like sticking, you know, really, they didn't look like they fit the rest of my hair. And I would be like, oh my gosh. And I'd be wanting to start patting these wild hairs down. And I was like, oh, self-consciousness. Yeah, I was wishing that someone else would hurry up and take center screen. But this is kind of what self-consciousness feels like. Let me see if I can share it. I put it in our thing for today. See that? So it feels like, you know, we pulled our face off and part of us is looking at ourselves. And I would also add that I would think that a lot of people are out here also around us staring back at us as well. Not just our own selves looking back, but a bunch of other people perhaps. Or maybe we project that a bunch of other people are as well. But there's certainly, we're doing it to ourselves, right? Because that's where the self-consciousness comes from. I know there's sometimes after I give a talk, and you know, if you want to play with self-consciousness, get in front of a group of people. And then if people don't say anything after the talk, or they look kind of confused or really tired and they're yawning a lot, and then everybody's like, yeah, bye. I think, oh, you know, there's a part that judge is going, oh, you must have really sucked. You know, that was terrible. I can't believe you said so-and-so instead of, you know, so-and-so, or did you use a curse word? Oh my goodness, how unskillful of you, right? So it's good that I get to look at this inner judge and be able to see it clearly. This is, you know, we talk a lot in Buddhist groups about the 4 Noble Truths. And this is the first noble truth of dukkha, of suffering. And we suffer because we grasp and we cling at things, and a desperate effort to either keep hold of them forever, please, let everybody love me and think I'm great all the time, or accept me or ignore me, or we recoil because we feel that we wish that we didn't exist or they didn't exist. Right? So either one, either wanting or recoiling, is a form of dukkha, because it comes from the second noble truth, which is the noble truth of desire, of wanting, of the grasping and clinging. And most of us are clinging to something. But what is it? You know? And I would just throw that out there, that perhaps is some ideal of perfection that society has told us that we're supposed to show up a certain way in order to be accepted or liked or loved, right? But one of the things we cling to is the gratification of our ego, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. But I've heard it said that this is a constant feeling of self-consciousness. This constant feeling of self-consciousness, if we have it a lot, is a form of inverted ego. So it's actually an ego manifestation. And the ego manifestations underneath might be beliefs or things coming up like I'm not good enough, or everyone is always judging me, or I can't do it, or I'm so embarrassed, I feel scrutinized, I'm not as good as everyone else. All of these things, even though they're negative, are still a form of ego, feeding the ego, right? Because we're drawing attention to ourselves. We're strengthening that sense of self. Whether it's a positive sense of self or an insecure sense of self, we're still strengthening that sense of egoic self, right? And I'm not judging or criticizing any of us because we all do it. This is the way our society is, the way we're taught or conditioned, right? Self-consciousness is learned in a lot of ways. The Buddha addressed self-consciousness. One of the stories he told was about this woman. She was a princess and she was gorgeous. And the king wanted her, he thought that she was very frivolous and only concerned with her looks. And the whole kingdom, everybody would come hoping to see and marvel at her beauty. So she always adorned herself with perfect gemstones and looked beautiful, and she was young and gorgeous. And her father was practicing with the Buddha, meditating, and he wanted his daughter to start meditating and practicing and evolving beyond looks. But he couldn't get her to come to see the Buddha because she thought it would be too ugly. And she only wanted to surround herself in beautiful surroundings, which would make her look really good, right? So finally, the father lied to her and said, you have to come see the Buddha. He's surrounded by beautiful flowers and fountains of water and gemstones. And so she came to see the Buddha, right? And he, in his magic eye, where he could see, psychic eye, they called it, he could see her coming, and he saw her coming in the doorway. What he did is he projected a view of another woman sitting where he was, or standing or sitting, who was much more, even more gorgeous than she was. So when she came in to see the Buddha, she saw this even more beautiful woman than her. So she felt self-conscious and upset, you know. And then before her eyes, he turned the vision of the older woman, the other woman, older and older and older, until she became old, gray, wrinkled, crooked, and then she shriveled up, and finally she died in front of this princess who was so concerned with looks. And then in that moment, the princess saw how self-possessed she was. No, everything was about her looks and self-conscious. And she was able to realize someday she's going to get old and be ugly and die as well. So she was able to let go of her obsession with her looks and start actually practicing. So out of compassion for us, I would say that our self-consciousness comes from our innate drive to survive. We're wired to want to be part of a tribe. So that part of us in our wiring is constantly checking in to see how we're being received by our group. Our survival depends on us being accepted into our group, particularly when we lived in tribes and groups where we all fed each other and took care of one another. I would say that also besides having our instinct, it's reinforced through our learning from our culture. I remember my mother in particular used to say things like, go fix that hair of yours. What will people think? What will the neighbors think? You know, if we had a broken down car outside, and with my Middle Eastern background, I used to get a lot of strong messages from my dad about we need to honor the reputation of the family. And if any one of us does anything disgraceful, we dishonor our whole family, and the reputation of our family will be ruined. That's a lot of pressure, you know. So that added a lot of self-consciousness. How do I look? Oh, I don't want to disgrace the family. What does everybody think? So I rebelled against this, and I decided to have a screw you attitude. I don't care what anybody thinks. That was my attitude. But the truth was, I really did care underneath all that. And that is why I was pretty quiet. I was a really quiet teenager and young adult. I pretty much lived by the theme that a closed mouth gathers no foot, which was how I was living my life. But that is, you know, this self-consciousness can be so painful, especially if we feel disgraced or embarrassed, excluded, And I had been doing my practice for about 5, maybe 10 years when I started realizing that I was really obsessed with what other people thought about me, that I was constantly looking to others to see what their experiences were after I said something. And I started to notice how much people's approval really meant to me. Yeah, and how painful it was when I didn't get the approval, the contraction and the shrinking, and or the fear and the hiding. Well, I'll just hide and not say anything. So going between trying or hiding was what it usually caused. Then after seeing this clearly, I started working with this self-conscious energy, and I thought I got over it. I figured, oh, okay, it's no longer bothering me. I started being myself, feeling free, just be yourself. And then years ago, I was a part of a community, and one of the people in the community got frustrated with me and started portraying me to others as a really evil person, and basically making things up that weren't true. And then other people in the community started believing them, and there was a lot of gossip, and I found out what was going on. All I knew is I was being shunned, and it was so painful, right? I was so upset. I was really hurt, felt beaten down, and then I realized, oh, so I still do suffer with this self-consciousness, this desire to be seen in a positive light. What's really interesting is when you study neuroscience, that the mind cannot distinguish between physical and psychological pain. The same neurons fire, whether your hand is smashed with a hammer or whether someone disgraces you in front of other people. So it's pain. It's felt in the brain as pain. That's why we suffer so much when it happens. The Buddha would have called that one of the worldly winds, right? Disgrace. So I had said in my quote, because I couldn't come up with a quote on self-consciousness, that our practice, our Buddhist practice, actually moves us from self-consciousness to self-awareness, to awareness itself. So there's a continuum, right? And as soon as we bring mindfulness to self-consciousness, when we get caught in, is very painful. Oh, it hurts, contraction. And as soon as we bring mindfulness to this contraction or this pain or this excitement, if it's positive self-consciousness, then we've moved ourselves from self-consciousness to self-awareness, right? And then if we can be with our experience for a prolonged period of time and bring compassion to this energy whenever it's arising, form a healthy relationship with it, then we are able to drop this connection, this identity with self-consciousness and even self-awareness, and move into awareness itself. It's like awareness is just flowing. So we do that by using this Vipassana practice, right? And our actual sitting practice supports this perfectly, because when we're sitting, and if our breath is our anchor, we have an anchor, that we keep bringing our awareness to. If it's the body, maybe body scanning or the breath, or even walking meditation, we're paying attention to our anchor, our bodily sensations, our states of mind, etc. And then we're noting them, what's happening each moment. We're noticing what's happening, sustained period of time. And then when we leave our anchor, right, we see where we went and we automatically come back to our anchor. This way we learn to be able to not only see where we're going, but be able to let go of the things that are pulling us away from our anchor. When we get stuck and we can't seem to go back to our anchor, we notice that the mind gets frozen, gets perhaps contracted, stuck, or disassociated. Our experience of our spacious self is no longer there, right? So we're in the stuck state. And it's really important with our labeling practice to be able to acknowledge stuck, or self-conscious, labeling that, and then we come back to our awareness of the experience. So that way we can notice self-consciousness, and then come back to our experience. But if it's too painful, then we need to bring more awareness to the self-consciousness itself, right? Sometimes we can just be like, oh, the self is really conscious of itself right now, right? So first we want to notice the stuckness. Then we want to look at what comes next, right? Because there's usually some kind of fear, doubt, feelings of inadequacy, oh, my hair looks, I don't look right. Then we want to notice the discomfort or dislike that arises, right? And then we want to notice if there's a desire to get rid of it or fix it, like patting the hair down. I wasn't patting my hair down, I wanted to. What was funny is I would wait till I was no longer center screen and then pat my hair. Oh, geez. So there was part of me that wanted to get rid of it. And then perhaps remember what happened. Many times you get frustrated or desperate. Perhaps you get really like stuck, so stuck. Then you wonder, you try to do something to get rid of it, and you wonder why it won't disappear, or maybe you judge it and wish it would go away. Then maybe you make things up, stories. Here we go with the story. Like something's wrong with me, or I'm inadequate in some way. And then we can get caught in this loop, the pain and contraction, and the story, and then the desire to get rid of it. And then what can happen is we can get in these endless loops, and then we'll start beating ourselves up, perhaps, maybe even avoiding things that bring up our self-consciousness, as if that thing is causing us the self-consciousness, and not saying that it's within us, unless it's a group of really judgmental, inappropriate, rude people, or group or something. But yeah, so we want to see this with our practice, see it clearly, each step along the way, all the different domino effect, and bring compassionate, mindful attention to this progression. This is one important way of being able to deactivate it. But the one thing to realize is that almost everyone, unless they're delusional or unconscious or self-actualized, to a really extreme state, is quietly suffering the same insecurity that everyone else is, of self-consciousness. And we're all hiding it, when it arises. Oh gosh. Then we don't want anyone, then we become self-conscious about, what if someone knows how self-conscious? We really need to be compassionate with ourselves, kind with this doubting mind, this fearing mind, whatever, this train of this habit pattern. It's just a habit pattern, and it can be deactivated. But just about everyone's in the same boat to some degree on the spectrum of self-consciousness. So just to lighten it up a little bit, here's a story. A little girl was sitting on her grandfather's lap as he read her a bedtime story. From time to time, she would take her eyes off the book and reach up and touch his wrinkled cheek. She was alternately stroking her own cheek, then his again. Finally, she spoke up. "Grandpa, did God make you?" "Oh, yes, sweetheart," he answered. "God made me a long time ago." "Oh," she paused. "Grandpa, did God make me too?" "Yes, indeed, honey," he said. "God made you just a little while ago." Feeling their respective faces again, she observed and then said, "God's getting better at it, isn't he?" So the Tibetan Buddhist tradition has this practice of cutting through the ego. And it's based on the sutras from the Prajna Paramitas. But it's called this ancient practice of cha, which is actually practice spelled chod, C-H-O-D. And it combines the Buddhist meditation and philosophy of ancient Tibetan, Siberian shamanic rituals that includes you going into a trance, meditation trance. We did it at the end of our meditation. And this trance, they transform their body into nectar, and they journey into the realms of spirits to bless the demons and help them find liberation. Right? So I did it a little differently than the practice because I didn't want to startle you in deep meditation, but basically they're personifying their fears as demons. So they take their demon and personify it, their fears, and personify it as a demon, so that you can see through the illusory nature, this battle between you and your pesky demons, and eventually resolve the conflict and rest in a deeper state of inner peace, actually. So these inner demons are part of our unconsciousness. There's these fears, these traumas we've had that are not healed. They can sabotage us, these inner demons, these unconscious desires or needs or fears. And they have our best intentions in mind, but they really can sabotage our intentions, like self-consciousness, obsession, fear, chronic illness, depression, anxiety, addiction. They can all be feeding into these patterns. I know that for a while, for years before I led a guided meditation or gave a talk, I would go in this state of panic. Like, oh God, I'm not good enough. What if people, I felt like a fraud here. I've been meditating for, at that time, maybe 20 years, deep practice, and now 30 some years, and I still feel fear and anxiety sometimes. So this is a deeply rooted demon or pattern that I've been working with. It gets a little easier all the time. So you want to actually transform these demons. And some people have problem with the word demons. So if something else works for you, or personifying that do that. But in this practice, there are 4 levels, and I'll just briefly talk about the levels. There's the outer demons. They're called tangible demons, and they the ones that are the outside demons, the ones that we can see. They're really clear. In our outer life, right? The things that we chase after in our outer life, things that we need, stuff that we attack or fear in our outer life, believe are constant threats, right? Sometimes our outer demons are manifestations of an inner demon that's projecting into our outer, but the inner demons function more on the level of the mind. So they usually don't have a real basis to them in the outer world, to the inner demons. They're called intangible. And these can motivate those constant circling thoughts that we get stuck in, the looping thoughts that are inner demons. And they can be fed by stories of our inner demons, memories, thoughts, fantasy stories that get conjured up in the inner realm. Then there's the next level is the demons of elation, and those are the ones that are really obsessed with pride and success and needing to be seen as achieving and successful. And the last demon is the demon of egocentricity. And this is the foundation that we have to deal with, because we feel that we have a separate sense of self. This is the one that becomes obsessed with the self. This is where self-consciousness comes from, right? So this is, and it's considered the head honcho of all demons, that a lot of everything bubbles up from this demon into all the other 3 demons. So we really need to get at these deep, egocentric, self-important foundation, this conjured up sense of self. Yeah, so whether you want to learn more about that or not, if that really excites you or not, but what you do is, like we did in our meditation, you pick a demon that's held in your body, maybe self-consciousness, right? When it's there, you personify it outside of you. You see the demon in front of you. If you prefer an animal or a plant or something else, then you ask it these questions, the ones that we did, and I'll copy and paste those into the chat. What do you want? What do you really need? And how will you feel when you get what you need? Right? Boom, it's in the chat box. So those are the 3 questions you ask the demon. Then after you do that, then you switch places with the demon, and you become the demon, the him or her, they demon. And then you ask yourself as the demon the same questions. What do you want? What do you really need? And how will you feel when you get what you need? Then you return to your seat opposite the demon again. And then you just dissolve your body into nectar of whatever it is that the demon needs in order to heal or to be whole. And you let it drink your nectar until it feels satisfied and it feels more calm and at peace. And that's the practice of Chod. Some people are attracted to it, some are not. But you might notice that the demon transforms into something else, more beautiful or calm or peaceful, maybe a wise guide or something. And then you return to your seat again, and you can both dissolve into the light together. And then if you want, then you go back to your resting in awareness and slowly allow yourself to come back to your body. So that's your practice. That's a Chod practice. And then, so just to sum up, ignoring self-consciousness does not help it go away. Avoiding people and situations that make you feel self-conscious does not help, certainly will not help it go away. Hating your self-consciousness and trying to get rid of it, it does not work, right? What works is bringing your loving, kind curiosity, your mindful attention to this energy, because that's what it really needs. It needs to know that it's okay, that it's okay. And give that part of yourself what it needs to feel okay in the world. And that is, there's so much more as I usually end, but that's a great start with working with self-consciousness. So may you be free of debilitating self-consciousness. May you let your unique and beautiful light shine for yourself, and may you enjoy it, and may you shine it for the world and the beautiful people around you as well. Thank you.